Welcome to Side Notes. I'm here with a philanthropist, also someone who is the current president CEO of the Prostate Canada Society of Canada, Mr. Rocco Rossi. Rocco, thank you so much for joining me.
Great pleasure to be here, Reg.
Now, one thing that you're a very big advocate of, you're saying a lot of people that have immigrated over to Canada, that they're facing this barrier because of the second language. You have an amazing story. Your parents immigrated from Italy to Canada. You were born in Toronto, but your mother was facing, she felt like she was in prison because of she didn't know English. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, it was a difficult time. She was very young when she came, and she had me and my four sisters came, pretty rapidly. And so there was no evil conspiracy or anything, just the reality of raising a big family and being a new immigrant. And so she didn't have the opportunity early on to learn English. And that meant if the phone rang and the person on the other line wasn't speaking in Italian, she'd hang up the phone. If someone knocked at the door and she didn't recognize it, she couldn't speak to the person. She couldn't come to parent-teacher nights. And it was very difficult for her. Probably the worst story, one day normally she did the shopping with my father, but she decided to surprise him, and she was going to do it on her own. And the streetcar used to run across Danforth Bloor, and she got on and she missed the stop where the grocery store is, and she couldn't speak to say stop and let me off, so she went and she had to wait for the streetcar to go all the way to the end of the city and come back to get off at the right time. So thankfully, one day a woman arrived at the door, knocked on the door, who did speak Italian, and she offered that there were English language courses for immigrant women, funded by the United Way and run through the YMCA. And my mom kind of laughed at her and said, well, I've got several small children, a couple in diapers. I'd love to take classes, but unless someone takes care of the kids, I can't do it. And they were great. They had daycare as well. And so she could take the courses, and she learned to speak, and it totally transformed her life. It allowed her to go outside the home much more. She ended up, when we were a little bit bigger, taking a job. There was a point early on when I don't know when she slept, because she's raising 5 kids. She was working the midnight shift at Kaiser Aluminum at Eglinton and Pharmacy, and coming back in time to wake us up, feed us breakfast, send us to school, and all the rest. But if it wasn't for that leg up and that opportunity, it's very difficult to integrate into the society.
And how important was it when you were growing up, you grew up in a multicultural society, how important you feel that upbringing relates to what you're doing nowadays?
Well, my parents didn't have a lot of education, but they were incredibly supportive, and it's a strong family environment. I have 4 younger sisters, and they always encouraged me to work hard at school. And I was very fortunate and won scholarships to go to Upper Canada College, and then to McGill, and then to Princeton. All because of that support I got at home, and the value that's put on school, and that nothing is beyond your dreams if you're willing to work for it.
And then when you were finished Princeton, you came back to Toronto. You started working for Labatt's, and there was a couple other for-profit corporations you're working for. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I came back. I was actually training to be a professor at Princeton, and my mom got ill, and so in the middle of my dissertation, I came back to Canada, and one thing led to another, and thankfully she got better. But I got involved in different businesses, um, and then I got caught up in business. It was almost I transferred the desire to do well in school and get high marks and the gold star to in business. It was all about, how to get the next promotion, how to make more money, how to buy a bigger house, a newer car. And, I reached a point where, I was a believer that the guy who dies with the most toys wins. And I, rapidly progressed in business to the point where I was a senior executive for Labatt Interbrew, one of the world's largest beer companies. I went with my boss at the time to Belgium to present to our board, and we had a big celebration, as only beer executives can celebrate, with a pipeline directly to the brewery. And he and I were to have breakfast the next day, and tragically, he died in his sleep of a massive coronary. He was age 44, 2 boys in school with my son.
So he was the one that actually made you start rethinking, re-examining what you're going through, and then you start turning towards nonprofit.
Yeah, my kind of whole world collapsed at that point. The things I thought were so important really weren't all that important when could be taken away, and then 2 boys at that young age no longer have a dad, a wife no longer with a husband, long story short, I ended up leaving the business world and deciding that I was going to devote myself to some form of public service, and I've been involved since in the not-for-profit or the political world pretty much ever since.
And you were also the CEO of the Heart and Stroke Foundation. One thing that I noticed when I was reading, that you were responsible for helping to raise funds to put the defibrillators all over Toronto. So far, apparently it's saved about 30 lives within the TTC, and the TTC actually gave you an award for it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, there was nothing I could do to save Don, my boss who died in Belgium, but as all things, it creates ripples in your life. And I was fortunate at Heart and Stroke to help lead an initiative to put defibrillators into public spaces around the province of Ontario. And actually now over 50 people have been saved across the province. But maybe the most meaningful moment came at the end of the first year of the program, just a few days, a week or so before Christmas. I got a call from a woman in Hamilton who said, "Mr. Rossi, you don't know who I am, but 3 days ago my dad was going to the Cops Coliseum for an event, and he collapsed on the steps, and the paramedics told us that he would have been dead by the time they reached him, but for the fact that there was a defibrillator on the wall and there were CPR trained individuals at the arena, and the people at the arena told us that Heart and Stroke had put that up, and when we called Heart and Stroke, they said you had led the initiative. So I just want you to know that we're celebrating Christmas with our dad instead of going to his funeral, and we want to thank you." And there is no better feeling in the world, right? There was nothing I could do for Don, but that ripple has led to decisions and actions that now over 50 people have been saved, and it's all because of how he inspired me.
And also the Toronto Star has called you the Richard Branson of philanthropy. You're involved with helping raise funds for the True Patriot Love Foundation. There's actually one exhibition that took off over to the summit over in Mount Everest. You were the co-chair of that. You were sharing with me right before the interview, you were talking about one of the veterans that you used to talk to. You talk a little bit about the time during this exhibition, and also this veteran you guys used to razz each other back and forth.
Well, it was a huge honor. I mean, first of all, True Patriot Love is a phenomenal organization, and Sean Francis and his team have done a brilliant job. And I had the opportunity and the time, together with my co-chair Tim Hodgson, to lead 10 civilians and 12 Canadian Forces vets who'd been injured serving the country, many of them in Afghanistan. And so I got to know all 12 of them because we spent a month together in Nepal climbing to Everest Base Camp and then Island Peak and raising money for injured veterans and their families. But one in particular ended up spending more time than the others. They're all remarkable, but Francois, or Frank as he likes to be called, came very close to death, was in coma for a while, and most of the right side of his body is reconstructed. He's blind in the right eye, and yet, he's pushing me up the mountain. I remember, we went up one part of the peak where from the top you have this magnificent view of Everest and several other mountains that are over 8,000 meters. And it's a mountain called Kalapatar, which in and of itself is not a particularly pretty one, but it has one of the best views in the Himalayas. And we get to the top of it, and Frank does a full kind of 180 with his head because he can only see out of his left eye. And he said, Rocco, the Taliban, they thought they'd kill me, but they only made me stronger. 99% of mankind will never see what I just saw with two eyes. I see it with one eye. That's good enough for me. And you can't help but just want to cry when you see someone who's that brave and that positive about life. Would be easy to get embittered. When I first met Frank early on, he said, early in my rehabilitation, the Army asked me to come out to an event in full dress, and I refused to do it. And so I'm thinking, here's a guy who's gone through major reconstructive surgery, and his life is altered incredibly by this a sacrifice he's made. Maybe he was just angry. He didn't want to do it because he was mad at the military, mad at the country for the consequences. And I said, Frank, totally understandable. He said, no, Rocco, you don't understand. I wasn't mad at the military. I didn't want to put on the full dress because I didn't feel worthy, because I couldn't go back to serve with my buddies. And I said, holy smokes, man. You've sacrificed so much already. If anyone deserves to wear full dress, it's you. Anyway, it's just, my hat's off to those who serve and who put their lives at risk for the rest of us. I'm pretty much a pacifist, but once our men and women are put in harm's way, then we owe a duty to them because they're sacrificing on our behalf, and it's the least we can do.
Well, I'd like to thank you as a fellow veteran myself, and I think another group that should be included in that is the first responders too. There's another group, but there's also, at the same time, you always had camera equipment following you, because the whole entire thing was documented, and there was a CBC documentary that was aired in, I think, 2013.
Yeah, called March to the Top, and it was wonderful following the 12 soldiers and their stories, and I highly recommend people to look for it and see it.
And there's also, you guys did a pilgrimage over to Spain for the Prostate that helped raise 250 kilometers. I think it was 2012 you guys did that.
Actually, I did that in 2013 in October, and in Spain there's there's an old pilgrimage route called the Camino de Santiago that people have walked for over 1,000 years. The church tells us that the remains of St. James the Greater, the apostle of Christ, is buried in the town of Santiago de Compostela, which is St. James Town in Spanish. And so for over 1,000 years, pilgrims have walked from around the world to go to the tomb. I've been very fortunate to be able to walk there 6 times in the last 12 years. It's a place of incredible reflection. And in fact, I went there shortly after Dawn died in Belgium, and it became a big part of my reflection on what I wanted to do next with my life. People had always asked and that wanted to go with me, and it's an intensely personal thing. You meet people, but it's impossible to walk 25, 30 kilometers a day, step for step, with other people, because you're going to want to stop at different places, take pictures, have a coffee, take a look at a view that moves you, and so I'd always resisted going with groups, but given the success of the March to the Top, I thought I'd do a fundraiser for Prostate Cancer Canada, and very fortunate with generous sponsors, and we raised about $160,000 for the cause, and each of us paid our own expenses our own way, and we walked 250 kilometers over 9 days, and you stay in church basements and monasteries and hostels along the way, and it's a beautiful place, and the fall in Spain is not a bad time. It's harvest season, and so we're picking apples and pears and figs and chestnuts as we went, and so ate well, great exercise, and raised funds and awareness for a great cause.
And you also have this event that you were talking about just before the interview that involved around the Mega Speed in March. Yeah. You're raffling off a car. February, you're going to be selling tickets at an event. In March, and then Father's Day, you're actually drawing for the car.
Yeah. Well, I now head up Prostate Cancer Canada, and my dad survived it. I've got a cousin fighting it, and so my family has been touched. And the biggest issue is guys are idiots, right? We don't take care of our health. We think we're indestructible, and we don't like to talk about health, particularly below the waist, unless we're bragging. So men end up dying and suffering unnecessarily. On the other hand, guys spend thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours on their cars, right? So we found that a great way to reach out to men and begin the conversation is to meet them in places where they are talking about cars. And our very generous partners at the Trillium Auto Dealers Association, the new car dealers of Ontario, have last year donated a wonderful custom car, and this year again have given us a car. So 100% of the proceeds of what we raise go to the cause. And we're going to launch that at the International Auto Show. It's a brand new 2014 black Corvette. The Corvette was ranked the car of the year at the Detroit Auto Show. So this is a smoking hot car, and we'll be selling tickets and doing the draw on Father's Day at the Yorkville Exotic Car Show right here in Toronto.
And looking back, 2012, you're presented with the Queen's Jubilee Medal. You've also been involved with the United Way, I think the Rotary Club, and other nonprofit foundations. As you look back now upon everything that you've done, is there much more that you want to do? And what kind of message do you want to leave with people that think that they can't make a difference in the world?
Right. Well, I'm going to be 52 this week, so I hope I've got a lot more that I can contribute.
I hope so too.
I've won the lottery, right? Like, I have a phenomenal life. I've got a great family that has supported me from day one. And I've had lots of opportunities that this country has presented, and I feel an obligation to give back. And I love it, and I love the feeling of it. So hopefully lots more chapters to come.
So what kind of advice would you want to give to people?
Well, nothing is out of reach. I mean, I started school, I didn't speak a word of English. And then once I learned, they couldn't shut me up. And school opened a lot of doors for me. And there are always mentors around. There are always people, you know, we often focus, we watch the news and we see stories of tragedies and awful people and evil people. But there are many more good people in the world. And they're willing to reach out and help and guide, and people have always shown up and been willing to to assist me, to give me opportunities, to give me advice, and I hope to return that favor by doing the same for others going forward.
And finally, you want to leave the website for Prostate Canada?
Yeah, it's prostatecancer.ca. And we are also on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and certainly anyone interested in helping, we're delighted. And we've got a big, 2014 is Prostate Cancer Canada's 20th anniversary. And I don't like to say we want to celebrate that, because I quite frankly like to be out of business, but we're marking the 20th anniversary by reinventing a signature event for us. Every year at Father's Day, for most of those 20 years, we've had the Father's Day Walk Run. And it's been a wonderful event, but it's not enough. In our 20th year, I really want us to step up our game and try to get it through those knuckleheads, our dads and the dads out there, to do what's necessary to protect their health and live a long life so that they're dancing at their grandchildren's weddings. And so the team is reinventing the whole period from the moment that the lights go down on Mother's Day in May until that third Sunday in June, which is Father's Day. We're creating the Do It for Dads movement. And we want people to come out and celebrate their dads and help raise awareness and funds for this incredible cause, either by coming out to one of the cities where the walk run is, or create your own event. If you're not in the city or you don't like a walk run, you want to have a barbecue, you want to have a bake sale, you want to do a golf tournament, a bike ride, whatever, fill your boots. You can create a web page on our site and solicit funds, or just share your stories about your dads. I want to see pictures. I want to see people tell those stories and connect, and show our dads how much we love them, and show how much it means to us for them to take care of themselves. So come to doitfordads.com and participate in marking our 20th anniversary and celebrating dads everywhere.
Well, thank you so much for your time there, Rocco.
Great pleasure. Thank you for the initiative.